There is no average user. We all have our ups and downs every day, and our users are no exceptions. When we build for average users, we miss out on opportunities to build better software for everyone. So today, we're going to talk about the difference between, come on. Hang on. Oh, shoot. There we go. Okay. There we go. So we're going to talk about the difference between an edge case and a stress case. I have a bunch of examples. I'll talk about the problems that I see, some solutions that I'm proposing, and then some wrap up. So first, an edge case, we talk about edge cases as marginal use cases. It's someone trying to order dinner while scuba diving, order dinner on an app while scuba diving. We think that's a weird set of steps. No one's going to do that. It could also be that a rideshare app thinks, oh, it's not a big deal if we prompt for a business account when you open the app. And even if that's at low battery. But let's take that situation and make it a little darker. So if you are in an unfamiliar part of town, it's late at night, you've been using your phone all day, you have 3% battery, and you're feeling unsafe. When you open the app, are you going to be prompted to add a business account, or are you going to be able to get a ride and get to safety quickly? So this is a stress case. It's a shift of mindset. It's understanding that people are not marginal. When we center the people, we build better software. So we talk about how people under stress can be using our software and also our products causing additional stress. Stressed people come in a variety of forms. Colorblind, like with our K cards. As someone with a hyphenated last name as a child, booking airline tickets was a nightmare. Person had a fight with a spouse, or they had a bad night of sleep, or a person has just been assaulted and needs help. Someone will be using our software on the worst day of their life, and how we treat them matters. When people are stressed, it's harder to understand text. We drop grade levels in our comprehension. It's harder to solve problems. We just have a harder time with critical thinking. We see things in black and white and don't see the gradients between them. And so it's hard to make decisions. And if someone is really angry, we shake, and it's harder to press buttons. So we lose our fine motor control. Stress can be temporary or it can be chronic. It can be a fight with a spouse, or it can be being a new parent. You never sleep, apparently. I'm glad that there are people who are raising children, but you never sleep. Stress cases, when we talk about stress cases, we're talking about the impact. We don't care as much about the specific steps that people take to get there. We want to talk about people who are in times of crisis, who are feeling stress, and then using our product. So I have a bunch of examples. In 2014, Facebook came out with its real name policy. This was a fantastic idea. It told me that if I saw Chris Kenst on Facebook and engaged with him, I knew that I was talking to Chris Kenst. Fantastic idea. They wanted people to be able to connect authentically with people that they thought they knew. The problem was that they didn't consider what real names could look like. So on Columbus Day, Shane Creeping Bear was told that his name didn't follow policy. He wasn't the only one. Robin Kills the Enemy, Lance Brown Eyes were all kicked off Facebook or locked temporarily while they had to prove their identity by showing their passports, their birth certificates. They were told that they didn't fit in, and they had to go through a lot of additional stress in proving their identity. Canvas is a learning management system, and teachers can search for their students on there to put in grades. It has gradebook and assignments and everything. But for a while, their search terms had to be 3 characters. So the problem is that Lee and Lay are very popular names in the United States, much more popular in other parts of the world, in some parts of the world. And these students are rendered basically invisible. They are unable to be found. So a teacher who's searching for a person with a 2-character last name has a hard time finding them. And it causes stress for the teacher, but it also makes the students invisible, which is an additional stressor. In moments of crisis, we want to treat people kindly. We want to help them get what they need. This is what technology is built for in some instances. So in this instance, A person searched for an emergency room, and the first result was an ad for an urgent care. Other things, looking for first aid videos on YouTube, I got an ad for cheese for a choking video and an ad for an internet service provider for a heart attack. We know that if people are searching for first aid or emergency rooms, that they're probably in crisis. So we can do better. We know how to manipulate the tech to do better. We should be treating people better. Period tracking. This one, yeah. Okay, so women, when downloading this app, were told that they had to choose one of 3 journeys. And those 3 journeys were basically, I don't want to be pregnant, or I do want to be pregnant. But there are a lot of reasons for women to track their periods. It's useful information about health, and if something is going wrong with the period, it helps to know that something may actually be wrong. So women who are not at risk of becoming pregnant and also don't want to become pregnant were told that they didn't fit in if they didn't fit in with these journeys. They were told that they were less than women because they didn't fit into this. Another period thing, Apple released its Apple Health. It was billed as track all of your metrics you're most interested in. You could track sleep quality, blood pressure, heart rate, steps walked, and chromium intake, but you could not track your period. The backlash was swift and severe. My favorite quotes: if you don't get why it's a problem Apple Health doesn't track periods, you may benefit from classes on biology, sexism, and/or marketing. And is it really too much to ask that Apple treat women and their health with as much care as they've treated humanity's sodium intake? I don't know what was going on at Apple when they decided not to include period tracking. Maybe they thought less than half the population is actually going to be interested in this, but it was a poor move, and they paid for it. Peppy Messages. Our companies really like showing personality by sending out fun messages to show how great we are, how cool we are, how hip we are. In this instance, it was tone deaf. So this man had written an elegy for his friend Elizabeth, and he got an email a couple days later. Your story has 3 recommends on Medium. Fun fact, Shakespeare only got 2 recommends on his first Medium story. So this man was grieving his friend, and they made light of an inappropriate situation, thinking that it was the right thing, thinking that people wanted to be engaged that way. This is an app that I used to work on. It was messaging, and we talked about when your trash was empty. Looks like your trash is empty. Your mother would be proud. We fought back on this. A few of us really had issues with it, because what if you don't have a mother, have a bad relationship with your mother, or just don't want to think about mothering? Like, do you ever need to bring in family stress into a trash scenario? We fought about this, or we advocated for it, and it eventually changed to your trash is empty, still upbeat, but less stress. My last example is Facebook's year in review. This was also 2014. Facebook had kind of a rough year in 2014. They introduced this thing where your most popular memories, your most popular post from the year would be shown as celebration. Eric Meyer had lost his daughter that June. And this was before there were a bunch of reactions, a bunch of different reactions. And so when he opened this, he saw his dead daughter's face surrounded by people partying. Other people saw slideshows of being dumped. They saw houses on fire. They saw sonograms of miscarried children. Facebook made a couple of missteps. They assumed that everyone wanted to remember their year, that everyone wanted to celebrate their year. And they didn't allow people a way to turn it off. They've since changed their things. You can hide memories, and it's toned down a little bit, but that first year was just a doozy. So there are some problems that I see. One is a very large problem. We don't have the diversity that we need on our teams. We work with people who look like us, who talk like us, who think like us, who are similar age to us, who have similar backgrounds. this is a problem that is much bigger than I can solve and that any of us can solve, but it is something that we need to consider, because when you have an engineer and a team of, when you have a team that doesn't look like the population that they're trying to market to, then you get stuff like happened with Facebook and with Apple, and you get fires. We're also conditioned to envision success. We think, oh yes, everyone wants to celebrate their year. This is going to be a game changer. This is going to be amazing. And we don't think about all of the ways that it can fail. And this one I have a solution for. We also don't know our users. Even if we have user sessions and can see how people are using our software, we don't see the faces behind those sessions. We don't see that this person really had a sleepless night. And so this struggle that looks odd that we want to dismiss, we don't see the face behind the session. And then the big thing is that we build for the average user. When it comes to people, there is no average user. In 1923, the American military designed the cockpit for the average American pilot. And when these same cockpits were used in World War II, crashes went up exponentially. One record was 17 in a day. And they knew that the American soldier had gotten larger because we were out of the Depression in World War II. And so they decided, well, we need a new cockpit. Let's do this again, take all of the averages and build a new cockpit. Well, when they actually did the research and looked to see how many soldiers fit the average of all of them, they thought, we'll have a good percentage. It was 0. There were exactly 0 soldiers that fit the average. So this is why we have adjustable chairs, because of the American military realizing that you couldn't have something for the average, because when it comes to people, there is no average. So we need to apply that to our attitude towards people's mentalities and stress. There is no average. I do have some solutions. So these solutions are geared towards uncovering the stress cases. I'm not saying that we need to fix everything, because fixing everything, we'd never get anything released. But at least being aware of the ways that we can cause stress, or that people under stress will be using our products at the beginning, lets us make informed decisions about fixing them and what to fix and what to leave. So this is about having more conversation and more information. The first is having a designated dissenter. This is a person who raises their hand and says, I have a question. What if someone had a really bad year? Do we really want to share that with them? They question the assumptions that we're working under. They say, what are we assuming, and why are we assuming that? And is there a better way? They can question the designs. This is what we are so good at. This is what testers excel at. However, it can be emotionally and mentally exhausting to be this person all the time. So I advocate that it switch around. And they're good critical thinking skills for everyone on the team to get into. And you don't want any one person to be labeled a downer or someone who just disagrees. So designated dissenter is a great thing, especially when starting out, to give everyone practice at saying no and saying why. Another option is a pre-mortem. Pre-mortem is a fantastic tool for figuring out what could go wrong before it goes wrong. So you get your team together, you talk about what you're going to be doing as if you've already done it. We rebuilt the wiki pages feature to be better, faster, more intuitive. Then you state the fiasco. Our project failed, we have a 1-star rating, customers are calling and are very angry, something is literally on fire, and you let people sit with it. Then you have them generate a big list of all the reasons for failure. Now, the reason that this works is because we all have different experiences, different things that have gone wrong, that we've seen go wrong in our past experiences. So my point of failure might be the one at the top left, and Bailey's point of failure might be the one at the very bottom. And it's important to flesh out all of these ideas, find all of these ideas, because we all feel stress differently. We all feel failure differently, and talking about that and analyzing it is great. So when you have all of the list, then you choose the ones that are most likely or the most severe, and you brainstorm how to not have that happen. The important thing is that you have to keep revisiting the plan. You have to come back to it over and over again and say, are we still making sure that we're not going to hurt people in this way? Are we making sure that this point of failure is not going to happen? You will probably still miss some things. That's fine. That's what we do. But uncovering the stress ahead of time will help us plan better for the end result. Okay, so those peppy messages that Shakespeare had only 2 recommends. Grab a colleague and ask them to make a very grumpy face at you and read your copy. Say it in the peppy tone that you want to hear, that you want your customers to say in their head. If you can get through it without feeling embarrassed, then great, put it in your software. But if you feel uncomfortable saying it to a person who is frowning at you and looking like they are just devastated, don't put it in, rethink it. We use personas a lot. Personas are a great tool for testing. We go through flows as personas, but often we think of them as being smiling faces. We need to write some trauma into their stories. We need to talk about their symptoms of stress. Is Sally a mother of 3, or is she a mother of 3 children in diapers and one who has, chronic vomiting? Is she sleeping at night? Is she worried about her job loss or partner's job loss? What's going on in her head? We see this with our friends and our families and our colleagues. We know what the people we care about are going through. But when it comes to personas, we don't often write those stories into the personas. So if we take a cancer diagnosis that we've seen a colleague struggle through at work and put that into a persona, if we take marital strife from our friends and put that into a persona, that'll give us a better attitude towards getting into their head and figuring out what could be harmful. Because the thing that we're trying to do is understand that our users don't get to choose their emotional state when they interact with our product. Someone will always be having a terrible day when they're interacting with our product, and we need to treat them kindly. We don't know if their dog died. We don't know what's going on in their head, and we cannot treat them like they are relaxed and happy all the time. So personas are useful for that. One of the final things is, this is great for testers, put yourself under stress. And if you are not a morning person, I am not a morning person, get up at 4 a.m. and do 30 minutes of testing. Record it because it will be hilarious, but also because you may not be thinking very clearly. And go through your flows. See where the sticking points are. See if you can scroll down and get through all that legal language. See what's going on in your head when you're just fuzzy. Other options, we all have bad meetings. Get out of a meeting and do 20 minutes of testing. If you really want to get angry, go read the comments on the internet somewhere. If you don't like math problems, do 10 minutes of math problems and then go do your testing. If you don't like literature, pick up some Dostoevsky, read 10 pages and then do your testing. The point is to get yourself into a frazzled state of mind where you are just having a hard time. You want to be a little angry, a little frustrated, a little time crunched, and do your testing there to really put yourself in the mind of a user who's frustrated. Now, this is not a good thing to do all the time. Just don't do it all the time. But every once in a while, it's good to get back into your product and see how things are going. Some other options for testing. We have to be bold. The mother message in the app that I worked on wouldn't have changed had a few of us not discussed it and been like, no, this is really bad. Had we not raised the issue and then advocated for the issue repeatedly, it would never have changed. And we have to be bold as testers in advocating for inclusivity and respect and compassion. We have to be flexible. We understand, most of us do Agile. We understand that stories change. We have to be flexible, but understanding that things can change for the better, but also for the worse. And figuring out how to, again, be bold and advocate for better software. We also have to be flexible with our colleagues. We're all doing the best we can. Like we know our developers, they're doing amazing work and they're doing the best they can. And we all fall short, and that's fine. We just have to be flexible and understanding and compassionate of each other as well as our users. Analyze risk. I don't think I need to go into this one too much because this is what we do. This is what we excel at. Accessibility, when we take accessibility seriously and we build for accessibility, we build better software for everyone. And this is the same with stress cases. When we consider people under stress and we build to make things easier for people who are stressed out, we build better software for everyone. Our flows get smoother. It's just better. Then finally, telling a story. It is a lot more compelling to hear if I'm frustrated and I have to scroll 6 pages to get to a button where the touch target is really small. I might cry at that point. That is a lot more effective than saying the touch target is a little small, or the touch target is 2 pixels smaller than the button. Things like that. Telling an effective story about people under stress can get more attention and be a more compelling reason for fixing things. Okay, I know I have talked really fast. I think I'm still within time. If you want to learn more, Sarah Wachter-Becher and Eric Meyer have written some fabulous books, Technically Wrong and Designed for Real Life. A lot of my examples are pulled from those. They care a lot about it. The thing about stress cases is that we get a lot of anecdotes about what goes wrong, and we are still trying to figure out how to talk about how to make things right. So they have some great ideas. The conversation is ongoing. What I hope you heard is that we all have our highs and lows. Our users are no exception. We need to consider people under stress, and we need to consider how our products can cause stress. And we need to be compassionate towards our users, but also towards each other. Okay, I cut out some content because I was worried about time, and I talked really fast. There we go.
We still have time, so that was good. Thank you, Rachel. Do you want to go back and expand on anything, or should we jump to questions?
So the slide that I cut out that I probably shouldn't have, one poor example is treating new mothers poorly. So smart scales are generally tuned to emphasize weight loss, but there are populations that we want to gain weight. Pregnant women, children, there are a lot of populations where it is very healthy to gain weight. But these smart scales will end up shaming people for gaining a pound. Do better tomorrow. Food tracking apps and breastfeeding. Women expend an enormous amount of calories through breastfeeding. And food tracking apps don't necessarily account for that. So you get a lot of calories and it says, you're over your calorie budget. Yes, but I'm feeding a child. And then fitness trackers worn on wrists. If you have your wrists angled up, then you don't get all of your steps. Some fitness trackers don't count your steps. If you're taller and your wrists are pointed down, you do get your steps. So if you are shorter and pushing a stroller or a grocery cart or a wheelchair, you may get chided for not getting all of your steps in. Whereas if you're taller and doing all those same things, you do. So we pretty much treat the people who are raising the next generation poorly. And that's probably something that we want to rethink as an industry. Okay, that was it.
Thanks, Rachel. So yeah, all right, let's start with Curtis for questions.
Okay, it went behind my thing when I clicked unmute. That's fun. I think I like the designated dissenter. I think testers are probably going to be best at it, and on most teams, probably the default. You suggested that we rotate it around, but a lot of teams only have one test person on them. So what are your thoughts on encouraging devs and PMs and whatnot to partake in that, and how do we help them get into a dissenting mindset?
I think it's a very useful skill for everyone. I want the developers and the product owner and the designer to be engaged in the same way. So leading by example, and maybe having a list of questions, like these are common risks in our software, where the tester can prime other people to just pick some of these, try some of them out. But prime and lead by example, and make it into, I hate gamification, but make it into an activity that everyone has to try and until they're comfortable with it. And the idea, you don't want to have a designated dissenter forever, but having a designated dissenter makes people learn the skills, and then everyone can step in and be like, oh yeah, well, I have a thought this time. And yeah, it's about creating a culture rather than an end goal in itself. Did that answer your question?
All right. So next up, and so this is why we do the green card, because we'll move to the next person with a green card unless somebody has a yellow card and then they interject. So the next green card is Eric, I believe.
Okay. I wanted to ask about dealing with the social pressure of people who are trying to get done. And, you know, I think this is a common tester thing, but hey, I don't think we're done yet. I think we need to think about more things and do more work and add on planned time to our schedule. How do you help advocate for the kinds of things you're talking about here?
A lot of the stuff that I try to do is to get that information out at the beginning so that it becomes assumed that we need to deal with it at the beginning rather than at the end. I've gotten into it with my team a couple times of like, we're at the end, really care about accessibility, but I'm willing to let it go, like, so that we can get something out. If you promise that we'll deal with this within 2 weeks, like if you promise that we'll get to this, like we want to start this test, we know that we need to deal with it. Let's get it out, but we have to do this fast follow. So there's a lot of negotiation. I've also, it's hard to do the politicking, to understand when it's time to expend social capital and when it's time to just let things go. And sometimes I expend a little more social capital than is useful. But understanding that balance, I think the personality skills are something that we're always trying to develop. Unless, I mean, if someone else has them and can teach me, let me know. But finding those things as soon as possible, then they become part of the roadmap.
Okay. Curtis has a yellow card, appropriate use. Go ahead, Curtis.
Yeah, so I was going to suggest for things like, you know, it doesn't work for everything, but for things like accessibility or maintainability or those kinds of things, there's frequently one person on the dev team that cares about that stuff, and you can clue them in, even if it's not, you know, the thing that they're working on right now. Like, you know, on my current team, Tim really cares about accessibility. On previous teams, it was Chad. You know, like, so if I have an accessibility issue that I want fixed, I could just ping Tim and he'll fix it now, or make the other developer fix it for me, and I don't have to use my social capital. I just tell them about something that they already care about, and then they go in and peer pressure the other developers into doing the thing that I wanted them to do in the first place.
I like that.
I have a yellow card just on this too. So one of the things that I found really useful is, and especially with accessibility, I know this, don't want to get on a tangent too much because I'm also the facilitator, but so with accessibility, if you have a legal representative in your company, They hate lawsuits. Frivolous lawsuits over accessibility are super annoying. They don't cost a lot of money, but they do cost something. And so if somebody won't do it, you can always ask your, if you have like somebody who's like a legal representative or CEO, like how much they care to lose over a frivolous lawsuit because you didn't like encode something correctly. Most of the time it's pretty low. They're just like, do it. Next green card is Bailey.
So I think I'm just wondering, like, what were some of the biggest challenges you faced, like when you introduced this into your teams, just to kind of plan for them? If I'm going to bring this into mine now, see if you learned any lessons that could make it easier this time around.
Actually, Dwayne's online. And one thing that Dwayne and I keep talking about, he's so obnoxious. We'll be doing our bug triage and I'll be like, no, I think this is an edge case. And he's like, Rachel, how about a person under stress? And like, then it becomes this dialogue, because there are a lot of things that people find that I'm like, oh, we really don't want to fix that. And it's that being able to tell a compelling story about where a person who's stressed out could be you doing it and making it personal. Like if you can, it's the telling the story that matters. Yeah. And putting that like in bug reports, if you put the story first and then the steps to reproduce, that gets more attention than just the steps to reproduce.
Awesome. Thanks.